Wings of Fire, an autobiography, APJ Abdul Kalam with Arun Tiwari. Contemplation. Technology, unlike science, is a group activity. It is not based on an individual intelligence but on the interacting intelligence of many. I think the biggest success of IGMDP is not the fact that in record time the country acquired the capability of making 5 state-of-the-art missile systems, but that through it some superb teams of scientists and engineers have been created. If someone asked me about my personal achievements in Indian rocketry, I would pin it down to having created an environment for teams of young people to put their heart and soul into their missions. In their formative stages, teams are much like children in spirit. They are excitable, full of vitality, enthusiasm, curiosity, and the desire to please and excel. As with children, however, these positive attributes can be destroyed by the behavior of misguided parents. For teams to be successful, the environment must offer scope for innovation. I confronted many such challenges during the course of my work at DDT and PR, ISRO, DRDO and elsewhere, but always ensured for my teams an environment which allowed innovation and risk-taking. When we first began creating project teams during the SLV3 project and later in IGMDP, people working in these teams found themselves in the front line of their organization's ambitions. Since a great deal of psychological investment had been made in these teams, they became both highly visible and highly vulnerable. They were personally expected to make a disproportionate contribution to win collective glory. I was aware that any failure in the organizational support system would negate the investment in team strategies. The teams would be relegated to the league of average working groups and might even fail there, unable to meet the high expectations set for them under the conditions allowed. On several occasions, the organization was on the verge of losing its nerve and imposing restraints. The high level of uncertainty and complexity associated with team activity very often proves to be a trap for the unwary. In the early years of the SLV3 project, I often had to counter nervousness at the top because progress was not tangibly or immediately visible. Many felt that the organization had lost control over SLV3, that the team would run on unchecked and cause chaos and confusion. But on all occasions, these fears were proved imaginary. There were many people in powerful positions in organizations, for example at VSSC, who underestimated the responsibility and commitment to organizational objectives that our team had. Coming to terms with these forces was a crucial part of the whole operation and was performed dexterously by Dr. Brahm Prakash. When you work as a project team, you need to develop a complex view of the success criteria. There are always multiple and often conflicting sets of expectations that exist about a team's performance. Then quite often the project teams are virtually torn apart in their attempt to accommodate the needs and constraints of subcontractors outside the organization and specialist departments within the organization. Good project teams are able to identify quickly the key person or people with whom negotiations of the success criteria must take place. A crucial aspect of the team leader's role is to influence and negotiate with these key people for their requirements and to ensure that the dialogue continues on a regular basis as the situation develops or changes. If there is one thing outsiders dislike, it is unpleasant surprises. Good teams ensure that there are none. The SLV3 team developed their own internal success criteria. We articulated our own standards, expectations, and objectives. We had our own way of summarizing what needed to be happen for us to be successful and how we would measure success. For instance, how were we going to accomplish our tasks? Who would do what and as per what standards? What were the time limits and how would the team conduct itself with reference to others in the organization? The process of arriving at the success criteria within a team is an intricate and skilled one because there is a lot happening under the surface. On the surface, the team is simply pushing activities through to achieve the project's mission goals. but I have repeatedly seen how people are poor in articulating what they want until they see a work center doing something they don't want them to do. A project team member must in fact act like a detective. He should probe for clues as to how the project is proceeding and then put together different bits of evidence to build up a clear, comprehensive, and deep understanding of the project's needs and requirements. At another level, the relationship between the project teams and the work centers should be encouraged and developed by the project leader. Both parties must be very clear in their minds about their mutual interdependence and the fact that both have a stake in the project. And yet another level, each side should assess the other's capabilities and identify areas of strength and weakness to plan what needs to be done and how it should be done. In fact, the whole game can be seen as a process of contracting. It is about exploring and arriving at an agreement on what each party expects of the other. It is about understanding realistically the constraints of the other party. It is about communicating success criteria, defining some simple rules on how the relationship is to work, but above all, it's the best means of developing clarity in the relationship both at the technical and personal levels in order to avoid any nasty surprises in the future. In IGMDP, Sivatanu Pillai and his team did some remarkable work in this area through their homegrown technique PACE, which stands for Program Analysis, Control and Evaluation. Daily between 12 noon to 1 p.m., they would sit with the project team and a certain work center on the critical path and generate the level of success among them. The excitement of planning how to succeed and the vision of future success provide an irresistible form of motivation which, I have found, can always make things happen. The concept of technology management has its roots in the developmental management models which originated in the early 60s out of a conflict between harmony-seeking and output-oriented management structures. There are basically two types of management orientations: primal, which values an economic employee, and rational, which values an organizational employee. My concept of management is woven around an employee who is a technology person. While the primal management school recognizes people for their independence and rational management acknowledges them for their dependability, I value them for their interdependence. Whereas the primal manager champions independent enterprise and the rational manager serves cooperation, I moot interdependent joint ventures, getting the forces together, networking people, resources, time schedules, costs, and so on. Abraham Maslow was the first person to moot the new psychology of self-actualization at a conceptual level. In Europe, Rudolf Steiner and Reg Revens developed this concept into the system of individual learning and organizational renewal. The Anglo-German management philosopher Fritz Schumacher introduced Buddhist economics and authored the concept of small is beautiful. In the Indian subcontinent, Mahatma Gandhi emphasized grassroots level technology and put the customer at the center of the entire business activity. J.R.D. Tata brought in progress-driven infrastructure. Dr. Homi Jehangir Baba and Professor Vikram Sarabhai launched the high technology-based atomic energy and space programs with a clear-cut emphasis on the natural laws of totality and flow. Advancing the developmental philosophy of Dr. Baba and Professor Sarabhai, Dr. M.S. Swaminathan ushered in the Green Revolution into India, working on another natural principle of integrity. Dr. Verghese Kurien brought in a powerful cooperative movement through a revolution in the dairy industry. Professor Satish Dhawan developed mission management concepts in space research. In the IGMDP, I attempted to integrate the vision of Professor Sarabhai and the mission of Professor Dhawan by adapting the high technology setting of Dr. Brahm Prakash's space research. I attempted to add the natural law of latency in founding the Indian Guided Missile Program to create a completely indigenous variety of technology management. To explain my thoughts with more clarity, let me turn to metaphors. The tree of technology management takes root only if there is the self-actualization of needs, renewal, interdependence, and natural flow. The growth patterns are characteristics of the evolution process, which means that things move in a combination of slow change and sudden transformation. Each transformation causes either a leap into a new, more complex level or a devastating crash to some earlier level. Dominant models reach a certain peak of success when they turn troublesome and the rate of change always accelerates. The stem of the tree is the molecular structure in which all actions are formative, all policies are normative, and all decisions are integrative. The branches of this tree are resources, assets, operations, and products which are nourished by the stem through a continuous performance evaluation and corrective update. This tree of technology management, if carefully tended, bears the fruits of an adaptive infrastructure, technology empowering of the institutions, the generation of technical skills among people, and finally self-reliance of the nation and improvement in the quality of life of its citizenry. When IGMDP was sanctioned in 1983, we did not have any adequate technology base. A few pockets of expertise were available, but we lacked the empowerment to utilize that expert technology. The multi-project environment of the program provided a challenge, for 5 advanced missile systems had to be simultaneously developed. This demanded judicious sharing of resources, establishing priorities, and progressive induction of manpower. Eventually, the IGMDP had 78 partners, including 36 technology centers and 41 production centers spread over public sector undertakings, ordnance factories, private industries, and professional societies, besides a well-knit bureaucratic structure in the government. In the management of the program, as much as in the technological inputs, we attempted to develop a model that was appropriate, even tailor-made, for our very specific needs and capabilities. We borrowed ideas that had been developed elsewhere, but adapted them in the light of what we knew were our strengths and what we recognized as the constraints we would be compelled to work under. All in all, appropriate management and our cooperative endeavors helped to prove what talent and potential lay in our research laboratories, government institutions, and private industries. The technology management philosophy of IGMDP is not exclusive to missile development. It represents the national urge to succeed and an awareness that the world is never again to be directed by muscle or money power. In fact, both these powers will flow through technological excellence. Only nations with technological superiority will enjoy freedom and sovereignty. Technology respects only technology. And as I said in the beginning, technology, unlike science, is a group activity. It does not grow on individual intelligence, but by intelligences interacting and ceaselessly influencing one another. And that is what I try to make IGMDP, a 78-strong Indian family which also makes missile systems. There has been much speculation and philosophizing about the life and times of a scientist, but not enough exploration in determining where they wanted to go and how they reached there. In sharing with you the story of my struggle to become a person, I have perhaps tried to give you some insight into this journey. I hope it will equip at least a few young people to stand up to the authoritarianism in our society. A characteristic feature of this social authoritarianism is its insidious ability to addict people to the endless pursuit of external rewards, wealth, prestige, position, promotion, approval of one's lifestyle by others, ceremonial honors, and status symbols of all kinds. To successfully pursue these goals, they have to learn elaborate rules of etiquette and familiarize themselves with customs, traditions, protocols, and the like. The youth of today must de-learn this self-defeating way of living life. The culture of working for material possessions and rewards must be discarded. When I see wealthy, powerful, learned people struggling to be at peace with themselves, I remember people like Ahmad Jalaluddin and Ayadurai Solomon. How happy they were with virtually no possessions. On the coast of Coromandel, where the earthy shells blow, in the middle of the sands, lived some really rich souls. 1 cotton lungi and half a candle, 1 old jug without a handle. These were all the worldly possessions of these kings in the middle of the sands. How did they feel so secure without anything to fall back upon? I believe they drew sustenance from within. They relied more on the inner signals and less on the external cues that I have mentioned above. Are you aware of your inner signals? Do you trust them? Do you have the focus of control over your life in your own hands? Take this from me. The more decisions you can make avoiding external pressures, which will constantly try to manipulate and immobilize you, the better your life will be, the better your society will become. The entire nation will benefit by having strong, inner-directed people as their leaders. A citizenry that thinks for itself, a country in which people know and trust themselves as individuals, would be virtually immune to manipulation by any unscrupulous authority or vested interest. Your willingness to use your own inner resources to invest your life, especially your imagination, will bring you success. When you undertake a task from your own uniquely individual standpoint, you will become a person. You, me, everyone on this planet is sent free by Him to cultivate all the creative potential within us and live at peace with our own conscience. We differ in the way we make our choices and evolve our destiny. Life is a difficult game. You can win it only by retaining your birthright to be a person. And to retain this right, you will have to be willing to take the social or external risks involved in ignoring pressures to do things the way others say they should be done. What will you call Siva Subramanya Iyer inviting me to have lunch in his kitchen? Zohara, my sister, mortgaging her gold bangles and chains to get me into engineering college. Professor Sponder insisting that I should sit with him in the front row for the group photograph. Making a hovercraft in a motor garage setup, Sudhakar's courage, Dr. Brahm Prakash's support, Narayanan's management, Venkatraman's vision, Arunachalam's drive. Each is an example of a strong inner strength and initiative. As Pythagoras had said 25 centuries ago, above all things, reverence yourself. I am not a philosopher. I am only a man of technology. I spent all my life learning rocketry, but as I worked with a very large cross-section of people in different organizations, I had an opportunity to understand the phenomenon of professional life in its bewildering complexity. When I look back upon what I have narrated so far, I feel it gives a dogmatic appearance to propositions which were really nothing more than my own observations and conclusions. My colleagues, associates, leaders, the real heroes of the drama I lived, the complex science of rocketry, the important issues of technology management, all seem to have been treated in a diagrammatic manner. The pains and cheers, the achievements and the failures, markedly differing in context, time and space, all appear grouped together. When you look down from an aircraft, people, houses, rocks, fields, trees, all appear as one homogeneous landscape, very difficult to distinguish from one another. What you have just read is a similar bird's eye view of my life seen, as it were, from far afar. My worthiness is all my doubt, his merit all my fear, contrasting which my quality does however appear. This is the story of the period ending with the first Agni launch. Life will go on. This great country will make great strides in all the fields if we think like a united nation of 900 million people. My story, the story of the son of Jainul Abidin, who lived for over 100 years on Mosque Street in Rameshwaram Island and died there. The story of a lad who sold newspapers to help his brother. The story of a pupil raised by Shiva Subramanya Iyer and Ayadurai Solomon. The story of a student taught by teachers like Pandalai. The story of an engineer spotted by M.G.K. Menon and groomed by the legendary Professor Sarabhai. The story of a scientist tested by failures and setbacks. The story of a leader supported by a large team of brilliant and dedicated professionals. This story will end with me, for I have no inheritance in the worldly sense. I have acquired nothing, built nothing, possessed nothing, no family, sons, daughters. I am a well in this great land, looking at its millions of boys and girls to draw for me the inexhaustible divinity and spread His grace everywhere, and as the water drawn from a well. I do not wish to set myself as an example to others, but I believe that a few souls may draw inspiration and come to balance that ultimate satisfaction which can only be found in the life of the Spirit. God's providence is your inheritance. The bloodline of my great-grandfather Aul, my grandfather Pakir, and my father Jainulabdin may end with Abdul Kalam, but his grace will never end, for it is eternal.